I record the question.
That's
Okay.
essentially what I asked was.
So, yes. Okay, so yesterday we left off talking about what? Charles' law here? Was it Charles' law? So if the temperature of a given quantity of gas is raised and pressure is held constant, see, that's the big thing. You got to hold the pressure constant.
Okay.
Then the gas will expand according to the temperature. So in other words, hot air will expand, but the density remains the same. So it's in a container. It's a closed container. Don't think about like outside.
Okay.
So I was it. Hot air will expand. So if I have it in here, let me see. Try to,
Density and weight the same thing?
yeah, so it expands.
Okay.
All right, here we go. So let me think. You have like an inner tube or something, right? You're gonna go floating down the river, or you got your little raft,
Okay.
right? You're gonna go hang out in the pool,
Okay.
right? So the pool water is really cold.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so you fill up your little rubber raft, you're all dizzy, you close it off, and it's like nice, and you put it in the cold water, and it kind of shrinks up, right?
Okay.
Or something that's cold, you leave it out, it expands.
Yeah.
The air inside weighs the same, right?
Yeah.
There's one in a closed container. It can expand when it heats up, and now your tube or whatever is more firm,
Yeah.
okay? But does it weigh anymore? Density stayed the same.
This is, you're
But
saying
expanded.
Like, this is like in a given container.
Yeah.
Like just in the same.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I just feel like densities.
Problem is we don't-
It seems like if it was more dense, then the volume would decrease.
Wouldn't the pressure
Yeah,
increase?
Yeah, pressure increases.
Pressure increases.
In my scenario, yeah.
But so the density, it seems like.
So I think the problem is maybe I shouldn't do it this way because we're talking about in a container of gas. We don't fly airplanes around in a container of gas. So therein lies the problem. So let's talk about not in a container of gas. So talk about outside. So when it gets hot outside, what happens to the air?
It's thinner.
It gets thinner, kind of moves apart more and it gets thinner. And so we say our density altitude is
Higher.
higher. And for any cubic foot of air, the density is less.
Low. Yep.
Does that make more sense? Instead of talking about a confined gas?
Yeah, I think the
No?
word density, I kind of agree. The word density doesn't seem right. It seems like the
Density?
mass of air
Yeah, the mass would
would be the same.
Because I'm thinking like when you're saying it expands, you have this amount of air.
Oh,
This
okay.
dense, it expands. It is no longer that dense.
Oh, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Like it has to.
That's what Charles
Take
said.
that up
I
with
just
Rob
copied it with
Hall.
Charles. You got to take it up with him, man.
I can see the weight staying the same. Are density and mass the same? That doesn't
Oh,
seem like.
Density is a factor of mass and volume.
Yeah, density is mass and volume.
Cooper, go get Rob Hall.
All right, everybody good on that? I mean, it's a good point. Maybe I'll write that. Just too confusing. Change it.
God, we can relax finally.
He's right. Get with Cooper and Adam.
Yeah, troopers. I'll just show you the camera. Give him an F. What? I don't know what the hell they do when they come in
Yeah, they
here.
definitely moved this one. It's like
Yeah,
not
they-
as.
yeah, they
Oh,
can.
This one used to be perfect.
Alex, you're right there. Adjust it.
You gotta lower.
You gotta push it.
All right, so you guys are going to be mechanics, some of you. So get used to dealing with pilots then. This is all designed to just,
We make it, they break it. Same shit.
Different day.
All right, so starting to write excessive heat, E-X-C-E-S-S, excessive heat, or the excessive heat from turbo compression is not good, not desirable. Why? So every time you compress air, and that's what I got off of you yesterday, compressing air. I talked about the compression igniter, which I got to get one of those. So when you compress air, air gets hot. So if it gets hot, then that is not a good thing, right? So you have to consider that when you talk about turbocharging or compressing. Is we talk a lot about oh, it just returns it to sea level. Well, it does, but the air is hotter, and so it's not as dense. Did I say that?
It's not true sea level.
Yeah. So what happens? So it actually lowers turbo effect. It could cause, if it got too much, detonation. So at 500 degrees, air is hot enough to ignite fuel. No, I certainly don't think that the compressed air is getting to 500 degrees because now we're above what cylinder head temps are. But it's something to consider. All right, talk about some definitions. Density now. All right. A ground boosted engine. A ground engine boosted. So ground boosted engine, that's what I wanted to say. That is an engine that has a MP, which stands for manifold pressure above atmospheric. Not how you spell that. Atmospheric. On the ground. So the whole idea of a turbocharger or supercharger is to trick the engine, to make the engine think something that is not true. So in other words, you take off in a normally aspirated engine. Everybody should know normally aspirated means non-turbocharged, non-supercharged. So you take off on a non-turbocharged engine, and if I have 100 horsepower on the ground, when I get to 1,000 feet, I no longer have 1,000 horsepower because I've climbed an altitude. So the engine's already losing horsepower, right? So if I were to take a turbocharger and put it on the engine, and the turbocharger worked just enough to make the engine think that it was at sea level all the time, then I've tricked the engine. Well, I could take it one step further, and I could make it think that it's at Death Valley, below sea level. Although we have an airplane, so we'd be climbing. But you can put more air than what is around. And that would kind of be cool, like if you went to Denver, right? Mile High City, so 5,000 feet, and you had some device that said, no, we're still back home in California in the valley, right? So you get all that power out of it still, because when you take off from a high altitude airport, it's you have to be very, very careful. Why do you have to be very, very careful when we take off from a high altitude airport?
Making less power.
Okay, number one, you have less power, less lift. So what happens around here is people like to go to Columbia. You guys know where Columbia is right up here? No?
Oh,
Huh?
that's where they make Coke, right?
That's the other Columbia.
Oh.
They make ice cream up there and soap. So no, they make soap. So, and maybe Coke. I don't know. So Columbia, it's up here in the mountains. It's not that high, maybe 3,000 feet. So it's kind of one of those. When I was a student pilot, my boss wanted me, CFI wanted me to go. Hey, I want you to do your student solo up to Columbia. Go to Columbia. Go in the morning. Go have some pancakes. I want you to take off before it gets too late, but I want you to experience, a little bit of high altitude kind of stuff, at least a little bit. So, but people go up there in the middle of summer, and it gets really hot around here in the summer. So you have a 110 degree day. They load up 4 big people in their 172 and try and take off from there. It doesn't work because the 172's got a, generally speaking, 150 horsepower engine, but now it's at 3,000 feet. I don't know what it is, 3,000 feet, plus you have density altitude issues. So now it's acting like it's 5,000 feet. They get to the end of the runway. The plane's not flying. So they force it off the ground, goes into stall, crashes into the trees at the end of the runway. So that's a bad thing, right? Okay, so density comes up and it gets you. So a ground boosted engine is one that has a turbocharger, supercharger that's actually going to give it more air than it would normally have received on the ground. As opposed to, and maybe this would have been a better one to start with, a turbo normalized. Or sometimes called an altitude engine. So that is a type of engine, or turbocharging, type of engine that uses a turbocharger, I'm just going to say turbo, or supercharger. Whoa, SC, supercharger. Look at that. I'm just saving time. I am now going to generate sea level pressure in the intake manifold. Manifold up to its critical altitude. So if you had a plane like this, and you're right here, sea level-ish, and wide open throttle, I look at my manifold pressure, it's going to say 29, 30. And I climb 1,000 feet, it's going to say 30. And I go up to 5,000 feet, it's going to say 30. And I go up to 10,000 feet, it's going to say 30, right? And so then I keep going until it gets to its critical altitude. We'll say it's 15,000 feet. So I get all the way up to 15,000 feet. I look at the manifold pressure, it says 30. And then I go up to 16,000 feet and it says 29. So as opposed to a normally aspirated engine that starts here at 30 and it goes up 1,000 feet and it's at 29. So this guy got all the way up to 16,000 feet, and the other guys at 1,000 feet have the same manifold pressure. So that's turbo normalized. But you go all the way back to the ground and it's just sea level. It's the best it'll do. All right, so critical altitude, I can define that a little bit more. The altitude at which an engine can no longer produce sea level horsepower. So I guess every engine has a critical altitude. Critical altitude at which an engine can no longer produce sea level horsepower. So you're sitting here tonight, we finish class, go out across the street, hop in your little 150. How high do you have to go before you reach your critical altitude? What's that? You're already past it because we're at 70 feet. So where's your critical altitude? 70 feet below you.
Get a shovel and start digging.
Start digging. So in a normally aspirated engine, that altitude is anything over sea level. So in a turbo or supercharged engine, that altitude is much higher. Okay. Talk about a supercharging. Supercharging. What do you think that is? Boosting the manifold pressure over how much?
Over 30.
30 inches. Yep. How do you do that?
Putting more air in it.
With what?
A supercharger.
Okay.
Or a turbocharger.
Turbo supercharger.
Done with the turbo or supercharger. Or basically a compressor. Anybody here was Mercedes for a while there, like the C230 and stuff?
Compressor.
Yeah, compressor with a K on it.
What about
That's supercharger,
supercharger?
right? The supercharger, yeah. Okay, so that's supercharging. Now, what is a supercharger? A supercharger is a gear or belt-driven compressor that can boost manifold pressure. That can boost manifold pressure. So right there, a centrifugal supercharger of a Bristol Centaurus radial aircraft engine. You know what I know about a Bristol Centaurus? Everything you see right there. That's all I know about it. So, but you know what a centrifugal supercharger is, I hope. And if you don't, I will go get Phil.
Oh, dude. Yeah, no.
Yeah,
It's like a
no?
turbocharger.
No, yeah.
My brother has one on his phone.
A Bristol
Oh,
Centaurus?
not the Bristol no, but I got a centrifugal one.
What does he have it on?
It's a Studebaker Avanti.
Oh, cool. Okay, so I just think that's gorgeous with all those gears and stuff like that. You'd be shocked at what some of the inside of some of these engines look like. They're just like, wow. You almost wish that they were made out of plexiglass to see it because they're beautiful on the inside. Yeah, so air centrifugal compressor. Where does the air come in? Up here on the top or through the bottom? Down to the bottom like this, and then interduct. So like the middle. Yes, and then it is forced outward. Okay. So it comes in the middle. What would you call these little fins right there? Oops. What are these fins? Diffusers. Which will do what?
Raise pressure.
Lower velocity, increase pressure, straighten out the air. Okay, it's going to come around. This has got a 2-stage. So there's a smaller one. Go through another one, out, boosted, there it goes. Okay. So what drives these compressors?
The engine.
Gears. Okay. Let me see. I know. I don't even know if that. All right. So there's a G3I supercharger has a 20,000 foot critical altitude. It's a belt-driven supercharger on the bottom of a Lycoming engine.
It's a blower.
Yeah.
Two fidget spinners.
That's a what?
Two fidget spinners.
So these little fidget spinners interlock and they spin around and they force the air up. When I was a kid, there was a movie called Mad Max or something.
Or something.
Yeah, Mad Max.
Yeah.
And didn't he have a supercharger on top of his car he could turn off and on like some sort of air compressor? I mean, a air conditioner. It had, yeah, it's like turn it on and suddenly it would start spinning. I'm like, I don't think it works that way because how would the fuel and air get through this? So
Put a clutch on it.
yes, put a clutch on it. So back here on the bottom, you'd have your carburetor. Carburetor come through here, compress it, push it out that hole right there, and off into the engine. These are some funky looking intake pipes, man. Or exhaust. Yeah, those are exhaust pipes. Those are weird.
They look really afterthoughty.
Yeah.
Next to that thing. They look like conduit.
Still below.
All right. I threw the supercharger. So it's belt driven. or gear driven. Let's see. So I had Dago Red up there. So I don't even know if that plane's still around. Dago Red. I just got this off the internet. Gets a 75 psi boost with manifold pressure. Boost in manifold pressure. That is a freaking lot. That is somewhere around 140 to 150 Hg. So you want to talk about 30? No, we've gone all the way up to 140 to 150 inches of room. So, but that is a 1,650 cubic inch V12 Rolls-Royce Merlin engine. So, some engines use a 2-speed compressor.
The shift gears.
Yeah, so the big radial that we have across the street. So what would be fun, if the extension cord's out, keep your fingers out of it, plug it in. And that prop's going around about this fast. Click. Okay, get a flashlight, look at the bottom. It's got an internal supercharger. It's spinning about that fast.
We did that, Phil.
Yeah, okay.
I did.
So even though the prop's spinning like this thing's going like this. I mean, it is really moving. Maybe it's going this way out. So,
Wait, how
and
do you do 2 speed?
somewhere on there, there's a thing where the pilot can shift it, and so it'll shift gears and then go into much higher speed, boost even higher. So you have low, what's that?
Higher altitude.
Yeah, higher altitude. Might even be economy. Go to lower setting for economy. I don't know.
That I've ever heard of.
You just think it's high altitude?
For certain altitude,
Okay.
I think 20,000 feet.
Oh, okay. I never flew one. When you talk about superchargers, or we talk about superchargers, there's not a lot to talk about. It's a mechanical device that is basically driven off the engine. So because an engineer sat down and thought about it, they know exactly how fast it's going to spin for any given RPM for the engine. So they don't have to worry about, is it boosting too much, not enough? It's just do the gear ratio. There it is. It runs. Follow? So there's no controls. There's nothing. It just spins with the engine. And you have the 2-speed, which, okay, you go high enough, it becomes inefficient because the air is so thin. So at that point, the pilot's like, I wish I had a bigger supercharger. I'd go higher. So they solve that by go faster. Just spin it faster. You'll compress more. What's the drawback to that?
Engine drives it, robs the engine of power.
It's hot.
It gets hotter, was what I was thinking. Okay, but to your point, the other thing is, and I'll talk about this, it does take power from the engine to run it. But I think I get that maybe.
You gotta get
Yeah, I get that on the next page. All right. Okay. So what forgot. We're still just doing.
Well, that's what I was saying. That's the cool thing about the turbo superchargers. You can hear.
You can what intercool?
You can where that blower, that one that was on the
Yeah.
grid, you can't really run through intercool. It's right there.
Yeah.
You know, but the centrifugal one you can pipe it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Turbocharger.
I'm just saying.
Okay.
That's cool.
That is cool.
Sign a plane.
Turbocharger. That is an exhaust gas driven compressor. The idea is, as we looked at some other class, how much heat is wasted out of the exhaust. So the idea is you take this heat energy, extract it in a turbocharger, because it's wasted, you're throwing it away anyway, and now you get free energy. Well, it's not quite free because you add a little back pressure to the engine, having to go through it, but extracting heat energy. In fact, a fun thing about that is when you get into second year, which you guys are getting close, eventually you're going to get into air cycle machines. And an air cycle machine basically uses a compressor and a turbocharger on jet aircraft. And the only thing that they do, they take air, bleed air, run it across a turbocharger to compress air. They take that air that they're compressing and throw it away. It compresses it for no reason whatsoever other than to extract work. They have to give the turbo something to do. They could have put a disc brake on that side, just put brake pads, right? But it wouldn't last very long. So it does. It extracts the work, and so the exhaust goes through it, extracts work, and then the exhaust is now cooler afterwards. Not so cool that you can touch it, but extracts the work out of it. All right, turbocharger. That's that. Turbo normalizer. I think I actually already did that one.
Oh, that's probably what subs do. And boats, like military boats and stuff. Don't they want the exhaust to be like hella cool? So you can't get thermal imaging?
Oh, maybe.
I just,
Does not boost manifold pressure over 30 inches. Turbo normalized. Turbo supercharger. That boosts manifold pressure over 30 inches. MAP stands for manifold absolute pressure. That is the pressure in the intake system. So pressure in the intake manifold. And that is what? Defined as what? What's intake manifold? It's from where to where?
It's from past the carburetor to the cylinder.
Throttle valve to cylinder. Before the intake valve. Up to and touching the intake valve, not past. Okay, manifold absolute pressure. Upper deck pressure.
pressure above.
Upper deck pressure. That is turbo outlet pressure. Or pressure between compressor to throttle. Everybody with me so far? Getting the picture? All right. What is that? Tubes. Those are the tubes you're looking for.
Yeah.
You got to make sure the tubes are all there. So this particular one has a what? Supercharger. The supercharger is either... All right. And the speed of the supercharger is directly dependent upon speed of the engine and the size of the gear pulleys. Right, so if I want more boost, I would just put a smaller pulley right there. Go faster, or a bigger one up at this end because it's belt driven. All right.
Always direct link for like it's gear driven, or do they like gear it up so it's just faster than the engine?
Oh yeah, you can gear it up. Well, the one I'm talking about across the street
Oh yeah.
spins way faster. All right, so this is a turbocharging system. You can see down here, maybe there's a turbocharger right there. It's got a little red cap on it for shipping. That would be the inlet. It's going to go up through here, through this funky little radiator called an intercooler. It is a funky radiator. It's just cooling air. So you got air going this way and air going that way. And it cools the air. When you cool the air, it's going to become more dense. As it got hot from compressing it. By the way, there's a compressor turbocharger on the other side too. So this is a bilateral bi-turbo. So air comes through here. Goes so from this point right here, I don't know if you can see a little hand right there waving, hi everybody. From that point on to this point is called what? I don't know. Not very many people are either engaged or understanding.
Top deck.
From this point right here all the way down here is called what?
Upper deck pressure.
Okay, upper deck pressure. Then from here, the manifold, or the throttle valve, down the pipe to this point right here is
Manifold absolute pressure.
manifold pressure. Manifold absolute pressure. We just call it manifold pressure. So manifold pressure. Now the problem with a turbocharger, there's a whole turbocharger, is it will spin as fast as it wants to based upon the gases coming through it. So it has to be controlled. With very few exceptions, can you just let it go do its own thing? Because it will boost too much. So you don't want that. Or maybe you do. I don't know. What's next? There we go. So what does it do? We'll come back to this slide. So air comes in for the air intake. Where did that come from? What's before it? Air cleaner. So you got the air cleaner. Going to come through here. It's going to come up and go through a compressor. So before it got to the compressor, it is air intake. Then the compressor. After the compressor, it's now called what kind of pressure? Upper deck until it gets to throttle. Then it goes into the cylinders. It's burned. It comes out exhaust. It goes out the exhaust and goes to the turbine. Well, I should back up because it got to this point, and this is called the Y gate because it looks like a Y. If you go like that, Y gate, and it will either go through a waste gate and out the pipe, or it will go up to the turbine wheel and spin the compressor and down. And so we have to be able to control this waste gate. And we're going to look at a lot about this controlling of the waste gate.
Is it separate from the turbo housing, or is it one piece?
Separate. It's a whole different thing. All right, purpose. Purpose of all of this stuff. There. Purpose. Purpose is to increase the manifold absolute pressure above the pressure of the atmosphere and the reason why is to increase horsepower. If it happens on the ground, we call it a what? Ground boosted. And if it is not boosted on the ground, the ground boosted engine, not like this, or at high altitude, ground boosted, boosted, or out of room there, normalized. What does it do to give me this horsepower? Increases what? Okay. Well, yes, increases the weight. You are correct. Weight of the fuel air mix delivered to engine. So increased pressure equals increased weight. Well, how does that give me more horsepower?
More fuel, baby.
More fuel, more air.
Well, couldn't I just dump more fuel into the engine?
No, stuck you.
Oh, that'd make it too rich. So remember the plank? P-L-A-N-K. Which one am I increasing? P, pressure. L, like the stroke and feed. A, area of the piston. N, RPM divided by 2, and K is the number of cylinders. Increases so which one of these does it affect?
Pressure.
P, so it increases the compression pressure. Does it change my compression ratio? No. Some of you are a little unsure.
Would it change your compressions? Like your like how much pressure? is in
The
the
compression ratio is the ratio between the
Yeah.
volume of the cylinder at top dead center versus
cylinder? But would it change the compression?
bottom
in the
dead center. Set it backwards. What?
Would it change like the compression in the cylinder? Is that?
Oh yeah, changes the pressure in the cylinder. Doesn't change the ratio. Volume at bottom dead center versus volume at top. The ratio stays the same. But if we had a pressure gauge right there and we were watching it, we said, oh look, if just running it without, running it with the starter, and we looked at it, we go, oh, look at that, it's come up to 150 psi, just run it off the starter, and then we turn on the boost pump or not boost pump, flick on our supercharger, it would pump a bunch of air, and there we go, oh, look at that, now it's up to 200, or run the turbocharger off a electric motor, I don't know. Yeah,
I think you're gonna answer my question, so I'm gonna save it.
you save it, okay, good. It's like a cupcake, and save it for later. It's good.
I don't save it.
We noticed. I don't either.
That's my 13th reason.
That's your what, 13th reason?
Yeah.
Why I'm going to die tonight?
I'm gonna kill
Oh, gosh, I was worried he's going to kill me.
Now it's
What do I get?
Now it's 14.
Well, it's obvious. The greater the pressure in the cylinder at the beginning of intake oh well, that's not, I don't know why I wrote this. The greater the pressure cylinder at the beginning of intake, the greater the pressure at the end. Well, I think it'd be better to say something like, on a normally aspirated engine, as the piston goes down, the valve opens, you have to suck the air in. But with the turbocharger, supercharger, it's now called forced induction. And the air is just, it's lining up waiting to get in like it's some sort of Taylor Swift concert, man. And you open up that valve and it's just the crowd's going to push on in there. So instead of it being sucked in, yeah, I know who Taylor Swift is. You got to.
You big Swiftie?
I know. I am. Yeah, big time. My daughter gets very mad at me because I can't tell the difference between Ariana Grande and somebody else, the girl who's on Only Murders in the Building. So they was yelling at me, that's not the same person. I'm like, okay. Anyway, so it's forced induction. It actually pushes into the cylinder as the cylinder's coming back. So you get a lot more in there. So that volumetric efficiency goes way up. Oh, funny. The next thing I wrote was Planck. Remember Planck? We just did Planck. So this is kind of cool, though. How does it work? Let me see. We got example. I have a certain engine. At 30 inches is 550 horsepower. At 35 inches, it is 700 horsepower, same engine. At 40 inches, it is 875 horsepower. And at 45 inches, we will get 1,050 horsepower.
Damn, when you get it,
Yeah, what was that? The 150?
yeah.
Huh?
That had,
What?
the engine that had you said it's like 140 inches?
Yeah,
What horsepower? did that
I
one
don't
have?
know.
Yeah,
Something
Mini.
scary.
All of them. That's how many.
Definitely.
Oh, break time. Huh?
When you were talking about the